r/pettyrevenge niece denied my insurance claim, so I ruined her career. The email hit my inbox at 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, and I knew before opening it that my life was about to get a whole lot more complicated. Claim #FL 2024-098432, final denial, sat there in bold letters, mocking me from my laptop screen as I sat in what used to be my restaurant's dining room, surrounded by the lingering smell of mold and the ghost of everything I built over the past 15 years. I clicked it open with fingers that had started to shake, not from fear, but from the kind of rage that starts in your gut and works its way up until your vision gets a little too sharp around the edges. Dear Mr. Patterson. Asterisk, after thorough review of your flood damage claim, we regret to inform you that your request for compensation in the amount of $49,847.32 has been denied. Our investigation has determined that the damage to Patterson's Bistro falls under exclusions outlined in Section 12.3.b of your policy, asterisk. The words blurred together after that. Exclusions. Insufficient documentation. Policy violations. All the corporate doublespeak that translated to one simple message: you're screwed. But it was the signature at the bottom that made my blood pressure spike into stroke territory. Sarah M. Patterson, Senior Claims Adjuster. Coastal Insurance Solutions. My niece. My own flesh and blood. The same Sarah who used to spend summers helping me prep vegetables in this very kitchen when she was 16, who I'd helped pay for her insurance certification courses just 8 years ago when she was struggling to get her career off the ground. The same Sarah who hadn't spoken to me since the reading of my mother's will 6 months ago. I leaned back in my chair, one of only 3 that hadn't been destroyed when Hurricane Debbie decided to redecorate my restaurant with 6 feet of standing water and enough sewage to make a swamp jealous. The bistro had been my baby, my retirement plan, my legacy. 24 tables, a full bar, and the kind of reputation that kept reservations booked 2 weeks out. Now it looked like a crime scene, complete with water lines on the walls and floors warped beyond recognition. The insurance claim should have been straightforward. I'd paid my premiums religiously for 12 years, never missed a payment, never filed so much as a broken window claim. The damage was clearly flood-related, clearly covered, and clearly documented with enough photos to fill a small gallery. My contractor had estimated repairs at just under 50 grand, and I'd submitted everything properly, on time, with every form filled out in triplicate. But apparently, family drama trumps professional ethics when you're Sarah Patterson. I pulled up her company's website and found her professional headshot, same stubborn jawline she'd inherited from our side of the family, same steel gray eyes that used to light up when I'd let her help with the dinner rush. Now those eyes belonged to someone who just tried to destroy my livelihood over a grudge. See, Sarah had expected to inherit my mother's house when she passed. Expected it so thoroughly that she'd been planning to move in, had already picked out new furniture, had probably mentally spent the equity. What she hadn't expected was for my mother to leave the property to me instead, along with a handwritten note explaining that she wanted me to have something to pass down to my own kids someday. Sarah took it about as well as you'd expect. Accusations flew. Lawyers got involved. Ugly things were said that couldn't be unsaid. But using her position to deny a legitimate insurance claim, that crossed a line from family drama into something much more serious. I cracked my knuckles and opened a new browser window. If Sarah wanted to play games with my future, it was time she learned that I didn't get to where I am by backing down from a fight. Game on, niece. The first thing I did was call my lawyer, Marcus Webb. We'd been friends since high school, and he'd handled all the legal paperwork when I bought the restaurant. More importantly, he'd also represented me during the whole mess with my mother's estate. Tom. Marcus picked up on the second ring. Please tell me this isn't about Sarah again. It's about Sarah again. I was already pulling up my insurance policy documents on my computer. But this time, she made it professional. I read him the denial email word for word. The silence on his end stretched long enough that I thought the call had dropped. Jesus Christ, Tom. Tell me you're not thinking what I think you're thinking. I'm thinking my niece just violated about 6 different professional regulations and cost me $50,000 because she's still pissed about a house. I scrolled through the denial reasons, my anger growing with each bullshit excuse. Look at this, they're claiming insufficient documentation when I submitted everything they requested. They're saying the damage isn't covered under flood provisions when I specifically bought flood coverage after Hurricane Ian. Tom, listen to me very carefully. Marcus's voice had shifted into full lawyer mode. Whatever you're planning, don't do anything stupid. If Sarah really did what you think she did, there are proper channels. The proper channels just denied my claim, Marcus. Then we appeal it. We get an independent adjuster. We file complaints with the State Insurance Commission. But we do it right. I was barely listening. I'd already opened Sarah's LinkedIn profile, studying her career progression. Senior Claims Adjuster at Coastal Insurance Solutions for 3 years. Before that, she'd worked for 2 smaller firms. Her profile was full of industry certifications, professional recommendations, and posts about ethical claims handling practices. The irony was almost beautiful. Tom. Are you listening to me? I'm listening. I clicked over to the Florida Department of Financial Services website. How long does an insurance appeal usually take? 6 to 8 months if we're lucky. Could be longer if they fight it. 6 to 8 months. I looked around at the destruction surrounding me, at the mold creeping up walls that used to display local artwork, at the kitchen where I perfected my grandmother's recipes now sitting empty and reeking of flood damage. I couldn't wait 6 to 8 months. My business loan payments didn't care about appeals. The health department wasn't going to extend my permits indefinitely. My staff had already found other jobs, and my regular customers were becoming someone else's regular customers. There's something else, Marcus. I pulled up Sarah's company bio. According to this, she's up for promotion to Regional Claims Manager next month. Big career move. Tom. She's also speaking at the Southeast Insurance Professionals Conference next week. Maintaining ethical standards in claims processing. I almost laughed at the title. You can't make this stuff up. Whatever you're thinking, don't. Let me handle this the right way. But Marcus didn't understand. This wasn't just about the money anymore. Sarah had looked at my claim, seen my name, and decided that our family dispute was more important than doing her job. She'd probably smiled while typing that denial email, thinking she was getting some kind of justice for the inheritance situation. She calculated that I'd just accept the denial, maybe file an appeal that would take months to resolve, and by then it wouldn't matter because the restaurant would be finished anyway. What Sarah hadn't calculated was that I'd spent 15 years in the restaurant business dealing with suppliers who tried to cheat me, competitors who tried to steal my staff, and city inspectors who expected weekly bribes. I'd learned how to fight dirty when I had to. And right now, I had to. I'll call you back, Marcus. Tom, don't. I hung up and started taking screenshots. I spent the next 3 hours doing what I do best, methodical preparation, the same kind of obsessive attention to detail that had made Patterson's Bistro successful. Sarah might have thought she could bury me with corporate bureaucracy, but she'd forgotten that I knew how to research recipes, suppliers, and regulations until I could recite them in my sleep. Insurance fraud investigations weren't that different. The Florida Department of Financial Services website became my new best friend. I downloaded complaint forms, regulatory guidelines, and disciplinary action reports. Turned out, insurance adjusters who let personal relationships influence their professional decisions faced some pretty serious consequences: license suspension, fines up to $50,000, and permanent black marks on their industry record. But I needed proof that Sarah had actually violated protocols, not just my word against hers. I pulled up my original claims submission and started cross-referencing it with Coastal Insurance's published claims handling procedures. Their own website promised thorough investigation within 30 days and fair assessment based solely on policy terms and documented evidence. Sarah had processed my denial in 12 days. For a $50,000 claim involving structural damage, that seemed awfully fast. I dug deeper into the denial letter, parsing every excuse they'd given me. The insufficient documentation claim was laughable. I'd submitted 43 photos, 3 contractor estimates, and a certified water damage assessment. More documentation than I'd used to get my original business loan. The policy exclusions were even better. They'd cited section 12.3.b, which I pulled up and read word for word. It excluded damage from gradual seepage or leakage over time. Hurricane Debbie had dumped 6 feet of water into my restaurant in 4 hours. Unless Sarah had redefined the laws of physics, there was nothing gradual about it. But the smoking gun was in the investigation notes. According to the denial letter, their adjuster had conducted an on-site inspection of the damage on October 15th. I checked my calendar, then checked it again. October 15th was a Sunday. The restaurant had been locked up, and I'd been in Tampa dealing with my equipment supplier. No one had contacted me about any inspection, and I sure as hell hadn't let anyone inside. Either Sarah had falsified the inspection report, or she'd sent someone to examine the property without my knowledge or consent, which violated about 6 different state insurance regulations. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus, *, don't do anything stupid. Let me handle this properly, *. I ignored it and kept digging. Sarah's company profile listed her direct supervisor as Regional Manager David Chin. His LinkedIn showed 22 years in the insurance industry and a master's degree in risk management. He also had a profile full of posts about compliance, ethical standards, and proper claims procedures. The kind of manager who probably wouldn't appreciate learning that one of his senior adjusters was using company resources to settle family grudges. I started drafting an email to Chin, laying out the timeline of Sarah's claim handling, the suspicious speed of the denial, and the mysterious inspection that never happened. But as I wrote, another idea started forming. Sarah was speaking at that industry conference next week. Maintaining ethical standards in claims processing, the presentation was scheduled for Thursday morning, and according to the conference website, it was one of the keynote sessions. Probably 100 industry professionals would be there, including potential future employers and professional contacts. The conference organizers had posted Sarah's bio and headshot on their website, along with a glowing description of her exemplary record in ethical claims management and her commitment to fair and thorough investigation procedures. I screenshot that too. Then I found something that made my pulse quicken. The conference had a feedback portal where attendees could submit questions for speakers in advance. Anonymous submissions were welcome. I cracked my knuckles and started typing. The feedback portal question took me 3 drafts to get right. Too aggressive and they'd delete it before Sarah ever saw it. Too subtle and she might not realize the trap until it was too late to matter. Ms. Patterson, given the increasing scrutiny on claims adjusters who allow personal relationships to influence professional decisions, what protocols does Coastal Insurance have in place to prevent conflicts of interest? Specifically, how do you handle situations where an adjuster might have prior knowledge of or relationships with claimants? Perfect. Professional enough to pass the moderators, pointed enough to make Sarah sweat when she saw it during her presentation prep. I submitted it anonymously and immediately started working on my real masterpiece, a detailed complaint to the Florida Department of Financial Services. Unlike the conference question, this one needed to be bulletproof, documented to hell and back, because Sarah's career would depend on how thoroughly they investigated. I was halfway through formatting my evidence when my phone rang. Unknown number, but local area code. Patterson's Bistro. Old habits die hard, even when the bistro was currently a moldy disaster zone. Is this Thomas Patterson? The voice was crisp, professional. Female. Depends who's asking. This is Jennifer Walsh from Coastal Insurance Solutions. I'm calling regarding your recent claim denial. I understand you may have some concerns about how your case was handled. I sat up straighter. This wasn't part of any script I'd expected. I have more than concerns, Ms. Walsh. I have questions about your company's investigation procedures. I see. There was a pause, the sound of papers rustling. Mr. Patterson, I need to ask you directly, do you have any personal relationship with Sarah Patterson, the adjuster who handled your claim? The question hit me like a slap. Someone else had already connected the dots. She's my niece, I said carefully. Is that relevant to your investigation? It's very relevant, Mr. Patterson. We've recently become aware of potential irregularities in several claims Ms. Patterson has handled. Your case has been flagged for review by our internal compliance department. My mind raced. Someone else was already investigating Sarah. That could work for me or against me, depending on what they'd found and how deep they planned to dig. What kind of irregularities? I can't discuss specifics, but I can tell you that your claim is being reassigned to a different adjuster for complete reevaluation. We should have a decision within 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Better than the 6-month appeal Marcus had warned me about, but something in Walsh's tone made me suspicious. Ms. Walsh, was Sarah supposed to recuse herself from my claim? Another pause, longer this time. Company policy requires disclosure of any personal relationships that might present a conflict of interest. That disclosure should have happened before any claim evaluation began. And if it didn't happen, then we have a problem, Mr. Patterson. After Walsh hung up, I sat staring at my phone. This changed things. If Coastal Insurance was already investigating Sarah, my carefully planned revenge might be redundant. Worse, it might backfire if they thought I was just a disgruntled claimant trying to cause trouble for personal reasons. But it also meant I'd been right about Sarah's violation. She'd broken company policy by handling my claim without disclosure, and now it was catching up to her. I pulled up my draft complaint to the state insurance board and started revising. If multiple parties were investigating Sarah simultaneously, I needed to make sure my version of events got into the official record before she could spin some story about family drama affecting my credibility. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, *, we need to talk. S*. Sarah. After 6 months of silence, she finally wanted to communicate. I typed back, about what? *, you know what? Meet me at Mom's house tonight. 8 p.m. *. The audacity was breathtaking. She wanted to meet at the house that had started this whole mess, probably to negotiate some kind of deal now that her career was in jeopardy. See you at 8, I replied. I pulled into the driveway of my mother's house at 7:55 p.m., giving myself just enough time to sit in the dark and watch Sarah pace back and forth in front of the living room window. Even from the car, I could see the tension in her shoulders, the way she kept running her hands through her hair, the same nervous tells she'd had since childhood. The house looked exactly the same as it had 6 months ago during our last screaming match. Same faded blue shutters, same overgrown rose bushes that my mother had never let anyone trim properly, same wooden porch where Sarah and I used to sit during those summer visits when she'd been more interested in learning to cook than destroying my life. I knocked instead of using my key. This wasn't a family visit. Sarah opened the door immediately, like she'd been waiting right behind it. She looked terrible, dark circles under her eyes, rumpled clothes, and a kind of hollow expression that comes from realizing your carefully constructed world is about to collapse. Tom. She stepped aside to let me in, but I stayed on the porch. You said we needed to talk. Talk. Not out here. The neighbors. The neighbors what? Might overhear you trying to bribe me into dropping my insurance complaint. Her face went white. How did you know about the internal investigation? Lucky guess. I finally stepped inside, but didn't sit down when she gestured toward the couch. Though I have to say, Sarah, the timing is interesting. 6 months of radio silence, and suddenly you want a family reunion the same day your company calls to discuss irregularities in your claims handling. She closed the door and leaned against it like she was trying to block my escape route. Listen, I know this looks bad. It doesn't look bad. It is bad. You violated company policy, falsified inspection reports, and used your position to settle a personal grudge. That's not looking bad, that's career suicide. I never falsified anything. The words came out too fast, too defensive. The inspection was legitimate. I sent Rodriguez out there on the 15th. To a locked building that I wasn't notified about. I pulled out my phone and showed her the calendar entry. I was in Tampa that day, Sarah. No one contacted me about any inspection, and Rodriguez sure as hell didn't have permission to enter my property without me present. She started to say something, then stopped. I could practically see her mental gears grinding, trying to figure out how much I actually knew versus how much I was bluffing. Look, she said finally, maybe there were some procedural issues, but the denial was legitimate. Your policy doesn't cover. My policy covers exactly what happened, and you know it. I stepped closer, watching her flinch backward. Section 12.3 excludes gradual damage over time. Hurricane Debbie flooding my restaurant in 4 hours isn't gradual, and pretending it is makes you either incompetent or dishonest. Which would you prefer on your disciplinary record? There's not going to be any disciplinary record. But her voice cracked on the words. Jennifer Walsh said it was just a routine review. Jennifer Walsh told me my case was flagged for irregularities and that you should have recused yourself for conflict of interest. That's not routine, that's compliance investigation territory. Sarah's composure finally cracked. She sank onto the couch, head in her hands. Jesus, Tom. Do you have any idea what this could do to my career? I'm up for regional manager next month. I've got the conference presentation on Thursday. If this gets out, you'll lose more than a promotion. I sat down across from her, but not close enough to suggest sympathy. License suspension, professional sanctions, industry blacklisting, that's what happens to adjusters who let personal shit influence their professional judgment. She looked up at me with those same steel gray eyes, but now they were desperate instead of defiant. What do you want? Finally. The real conversation could begin. What do I want? I leaned back in the chair that used to be my mother's favorite reading spot, taking my time with the question. Sarah was finally ready to negotiate, which meant she was finally understanding just how deep the hole she dug really was. I want my claim approved. Full amount, expedited processing, no more bullshit about policy exclusions that don't apply. I ticked off each point on my fingers. I want a written apology acknowledging the procedural violations. And I want you to personally oversee the expedited payment processing. Sarah nodded eagerly. Done. I can call Jennifer Walsh tomorrow morning, Anne. I'm not finished. My voice cut through her relief like a knife. I also want you to withdraw from that conference presentation. What? The color drained from her face again. Tom, that presentation is my chance to show the regional management team that I'm ready for promotion. I've been working on it for months. You've been working on a presentation about ethical standards while violating those same standards with my claim. The irony might be entertaining, but I'm not in a generous mood. Please. The word came out barely above a whisper. The promotion comes with a $40,000 salary increase. I've got student loans, a mortgage. You should have thought about that before you decided to play games with my livelihood. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the street where Sarah and I used to ride bikes during her summer visits. Here's the thing, Sarah. Even if you approve my claim tomorrow, I've already lost 2 months of business. 2 months of revenue that I'll never get back. My staff found other jobs. My regular customers went somewhere else. Some of my suppliers have already written me off as a bad risk. She was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was small and defeated. I never meant for it to go this far. When I first saw your claim come through, I was still so angry about the house, about Mom's will, about everything that happened. I thought maybe if your claim got held up for a while, you'd understand what it felt like to lose something important. So you decided to teach me a lesson using your company's resources and my family's financial future as your classroom. I turned back to face her. Brilliant plan, Sarah. Really professional. I know it was wrong. I knew it was wrong when I was doing it. Tears were starting to form in her eyes, but I'd moved past the point where family sympathy could reach me. But then time kept passing, and it got harder to reverse course without admitting what I'd done. So you doubled down. Falsified the inspection timeline, invented policy violations that didn't exist, and hoped I'd just roll over and accept it. The inspection wasn't falsified. The defensive anger flared up again. Rodriguez did go out there on the 15th. Maybe he couldn't get inside, but he did an exterior assessment, which you reported as a full on-site inspection in your denial letter. I pulled out my phone and read directly from her email. Our adjuster conducted a thorough on-site inspection of the claimed damage. Exterior assessment isn't thorough, and it sure as hell isn't on-site if you never went inside. She opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. We both knew I had her dead to rights on that one. My phone buzzed with a text message. Marcus again, asterisk called in some favors. Jennifer Walsh is head of internal compliance at Coastal. This isn't routine review, it's a formal investigation. 3 other adjusters under scrutiny for similar issues. Call me, asterisk. I showed Sarah the message and watched her face go ashen. 3 other adjusters, I said quietly. Looks like you're part of a pattern, not an isolated incident. That's going to make this a lot harder to sweep under the rug. Tom, please. Whatever you want, I'll do it. Just help me figure out how to make this right before it destroys everything I've worked for. I looked at my niece, really looked at her for the first time since walking into the house. She was 28 years old, scared out of her mind, and finally understanding that actions have consequences. But I was 45 years old, facing bankruptcy, and 6 months past the point of family mercy. I'll think about it, I said, and headed for the door. I spent the drive home from my mother's house thinking about Sarah's desperate face and trying to decide if I felt guilty about it. By the time I pulled into my apartment complex, I'd concluded that whatever guilt I might have felt had been burned away by 2 months of watching my life's work rot from the inside out. My apartment felt like a tomb compared to the controlled chaos I was used to at the restaurant. My claim is just one piece of a bigger pattern. Silence on his end. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter. How big a pattern? I told him about Jennifer Walsh's call, about the 3 other adjusters under investigation, about the systematic compliance review that was apparently sweeping through Coastal Insurance's claims department. David listened without interrupting, and I could practically hear him processing the implications. Jesus, he said finally. She really screwed herself, didn't she? Spectacularly. I opened a new browser tab and pulled up the conference website again. Sarah's headshot smiled back at me from the speaker's page, completely oblivious to the professional storm that was about to hit. The question now is how much collateral damage she's going to take with her. What do you mean? I hesitated. David was a good kid who'd gotten caught in the middle of adult drama that wasn't his fault. But he'd called me, which meant he was probably going to carry whatever I told him straight back to Sarah. I mean, your sister is about to give a presentation on ethical claims handling to a room full of industry professionals while under investigation for violating those same ethics. The optics alone could kill her career, even if the investigation clears her. Can't she just withdraw from the conference? She could, I admitted. But that would probably raise questions about why she's suddenly unavailable. Conference organizers don't like last-minute speaker cancellations, especially for keynote sessions. More silence. Then, you're enjoying this, aren't you? The question caught me off guard, mainly because I had to think about the answer. Was I enjoying watching Sarah's career implode? Was there some part of me that felt satisfied seeing her panic about losing everything she'd worked for? Your sister tried to destroy my business over a family grudge, I said finally. If I'm enjoying anything, it's watching karma catch up with someone who thought her position made her untouchable. She made a mistake. She made a choice, David. A calculated, deliberate choice to abuse her professional authority because she was pissed off about an inheritance. That's not a mistake, that's corruption. He was quiet for so long I thought he'd hung up. When he spoke again, his voice was strained. The promotion she's going for, it's not just about money, Uncle Tom. She's been trying to get pregnant for 2 years. She and Mike want to start a family, but they can't afford it on her current salary. The regional manager position comes with better health insurance, paid maternity leave. I closed my eyes. Of course there was more to the story. There always was. That's not my problem, David. I know. But maybe it could be your solution. I stared at the phone, David's last words hanging in the air like smoke. What the hell is that supposed to mean? I'm just saying, maybe there's a way for both of you to get what you need without destroying each other. His voice carried that same diplomatic tone he'd used as a kid when he was trying to negotiate peace between Sarah and me during our arguments. She needs to keep her career intact, and you need your insurance claim paid. My claim is getting paid regardless. Her company is already reassigning it to avoid the conflict of interest issue. I pulled up the complaint form I'd been working on, cursor blinking in the middle of a paragraph about professional misconduct. This isn't about the money anymore, David. Then what is it about? Good question. I looked around my empty apartment, thought about my gutted restaurant, remembered the 2 months of sleepless nights wondering if I was going to lose everything because my own niece decided to play God with my livelihood. Accountability, I said finally. Your sister needs to face consequences for what she did. Even if those consequences destroy her marriage, her career, and any chance she has of starting a family. She should have thought about that before I stopped mid-sentence. Something in David's tone bothered me, a careful precision that reminded me of Sarah when she was trying to manipulate a situation. David, why are you really calling me? Pause. Too long of a pause. Sarah doesn't know I'm calling. Bullshit. I'm serious. She thinks I'm on my way to the airport for a business trip. But I drove to your restaurant instead. That got my attention. You're here. In town. I'm sitting in your parking lot right now, looking at what used to be your dining room. His voice got quieter. Jesus, Uncle Tom. I had no idea it was this bad. The pictures you posted on Facebook didn't. This place is destroyed. I felt a weird twist in my stomach. I'd gotten used to the devastation, had been living with it for 2 months. But hearing David see it fresh, seeing it through the eyes of someone who remembered the restaurant in its prime, brought back the full weight of what I'd lost. Yeah, well. That's what happens when hurricanes meet family grudges. I can see why you're so angry. Another pause. But I can also see why Sarah might have thought you could absorb the financial hit better than most people. Excuse me. The inheritance, Uncle Tom. Mom's house is worth what, $300,000? Maybe $400 in the current market. Sarah's drowning in student loans and a mortgage she can barely afford, while you just inherited enough equity to rebuild this place twice over. The accusation hit me like a slap. Are you seriously suggesting that inheriting our mother's house somehow justifies Sarah committing insurance fraud? I'm suggesting maybe she saw someone who had options while she felt like she had none. So she decided to take away my options by destroying my business. My voice was getting louder, and I forced myself to calm down. David, I don't give a damn about her financial situation. I didn't ask for the inheritance, didn't lobby for it, didn't even know about it until the will reading. And none of that gives her the right to abuse her professional position. I know. You're right. He sighed. But here's the thing, what if she wasn't the only one? What do you mean? You said there were 3 other adjusters under investigation for similar issues. What if this isn't just about personal grudges? What if there's something bigger going on at Coastal Insurance? I hadn't considered that angle. I'd been so focused on Sarah's personal betrayal that I hadn't thought about the broader implications of multiple adjusters apparently violating ethics protocols. You think it's systematic? I think Jennifer Walsh didn't just randomly decide to investigate 4 different adjusters at the same time. Something triggered this review, and it probably wasn't just your complaint. My laptop chimed with an email notification. Jennifer Walsh's name appeared in my inbox with the subject line, Urgent, additional questions regarding claim #FL 2024-098432. David, I need to go. Walsh just emailed me. Wait, can I ask you one favor? What? Don't file that state complaint until after we talk in person. Give me 1 hour to show you something that might change how you think about this whole situation. I looked at my screen, Walsh's email waiting to be opened, my complaint form half finished in another window. 1 hour, I said, and hung up. I met David at the restaurant 20 minutes later, finding him standing in what used to be the main dining area with his hands shoved deep in his pockets. He looked older than I remembered, more like his father every year, with that same thoughtful expression that usually meant trouble was coming. Worse than the photos, he said without preamble, gesturing at the water-stained walls and warped flooring. I can see why you needed that insurance money. Needed. Past tense. I unlocked my phone and showed him Walsh's email. Want to hear something interesting? Coastal isn't just investigating Sarah's handling of my claim. They're conducting a complete audit of every claim she's processed in the last 18 months. David's face went pale. 18 months. That's hundreds of claims. Gets better. Walsh wants to schedule a phone interview with me tomorrow morning to discuss patterns of unusual claim processing that may extend beyond individual adjuster misconduct. I pocketed the phone and looked around at the destruction. Your sister didn't just screw me over, David. Apparently she's been screwing over a lot of people. That doesn't make sense. Sarah's always been obsessive about following procedures, even when we were kids. Remember how she used to organize her homework by subject and due date? She color-coded everything. People change. Especially when they're under financial pressure. I kicked at a piece of debris that used to be part of my hostess station. You said you wanted to show me something that would change how I think about this situation. What is it? David pulled out his phone and scrolled through what looked like a long text conversation. Sarah sent me this yesterday, right after Walsh called her. I think she's been set up. He handed me the phone. The messages were between Sarah and someone listed as Regional Supervisor, DC, probably David Chen, her boss. Asterisk Sarah, just got called into compliance review. They're saying there are irregularities in multiple claims I've handled. This is the first I'm hearing about any problems, asterisk. Asterisk DC, stay calm. Walsh is conducting routine audits on several adjusters. Standard procedure when corporate flags unusual patterns, asterisk. Asterisk Sarah, what patterns? I followed protocol on every claim, asterisk. Asterisk DC, some claims have been processed faster than average. Others have higher than normal denial rates. Nothing that can't be explained, asterisk. Asterisk DC, important thing is that you don't admit to any procedural violations. Company has your back if you stay consistent with established practices, asterisk. I read through the entire conversation twice, my anger shifting into something colder and more calculating. David, when did Sarah send you these screenshots? Yesterday around noon. Why? Because this conversation happened after Walsh called me about my claim being reassigned. I scrolled back to the top of the message thread. Look at the timestamp on Chen's first message. He contacted Sarah before the compliance department called her in for questioning. David frowned. So, So how did her direct supervisor know about a compliance investigation before the compliance department officially notified her? I handed his phone back. Either Chen has inside information about internal investigations, or he's involved in whatever Sarah's been doing. You think her boss told her to deny claims improperly? I think her boss told her to deny claims quickly and not ask too many questions about policy interpretations. The improper part might have been her own creative addition. I pulled up Walsh's latest email again. This audit isn't about one rogue adjuster, David. It's about systematic claim suppression, and Sarah just happens to be the one who got caught with a provable conflict of interest. David was quiet for a long moment, staring at the ruins of my dining room. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. If Sarah was following orders from her supervisor, and those orders led to improper claim denials, then she's not just facing disciplinary action from the state insurance board. She's facing potential criminal charges for insurance fraud. I watched his face crumble as the implications hit him. And so is David Chen. My phone started ringing. Jennifer Walsh's number. David, I need to take this. But first, does Sarah know you showed me those text messages? He shook his head. Good. Don't tell her. And whatever you do, don't let her delete them. I answered Walsh's call while David stood frozen among the wreckage of my restaurant, his face a mask of growing horror as the full scope of his sister's situation became clear. Mr. Patterson. Thank you for taking my call so quickly. Walsh's voice was crisp, all business. I have some additional questions about your interactions with Sarah Patterson during the claims process. I'm listening. Did Ms. Patterson ever contact you directly about your claim outside of official company communications? I thought back through the timeline. No official contact until I received the denial letter. But she knew about the claim. How do you know she knew? Because she mentioned it during a family argument 3 weeks before I received the denial. She made a comment about my expensive problems and suggested I should have saved money for emergencies instead of relying on insurance. Silence on Walsh's end, then the sound of rapid typing. Mr. Patterson, I need to ask this directly. Did Sarah Patterson ever suggest that your claim might be approved more favorably if you were willing to make certain concessions regarding your family's estate dispute? The question hit me like ice water. Are you asking if she tried to extort me? I'm asking if there was any indication that your claim approval was contingent on non-insurance related considerations. I looked at David, who was obviously listening to every word. His face had gone completely white. No direct quid pro quo, I said carefully. But the timing was suspicious. She knew I needed the insurance money to reopen quickly, and she knew I had limited liquid assets to cover repairs while waiting for approval. Understood. One more question. Have you filed any complaints about Ms. Patterson's handling of your claim with external agencies? Here it was. The moment where I either played it safe or dove headfirst into the deep end. I've prepared a complaint for the state insurance board, but I haven't submitted it yet. Mr. Patterson, I'm going to ask you to hold off on that filing until our internal investigation is complete. We believe Ms. Patterson's case may be part of a larger pattern of misconduct, and external complaints could compromise our ability to gather evidence on other potential violations. How long are we talking about? 2 weeks, possibly 3. I understand this is an inconvenience, but if our suspicions are correct, the state board will be very interested in our complete findings rather than individual complaints. After I hung up, David and I stood in uncomfortable silence for several minutes. He was staring at his phone, probably rereading Sarah's text conversation with Chen and understanding for the first time that his sister might be facing something much worse than a career setback. She's in real trouble, isn't she? He said finally. If Walsh is right about the larger pattern, then yes. Sarah's not just looking at disciplinary action, she could be facing criminal charges. I watched him process this. And those text messages you showed me might be the only evidence that she was following orders rather than acting on her own. What do you mean? I mean if this goes to court, Sarah's going to need to prove she was pressured by her supervisor to deny claims improperly. Without that evidence, she looks like a rogue adjuster who let personal grudges influence her professional decisions. David's phone buzzed with a new message. He glanced at it and his face somehow got even paler. Sarah. She wants to know if I've talked to you. He showed me the screen, asterisk, did you reach Uncle Tom? Need to know what he's planning to do about complaint, asterisk. Don't answer yet, I said. First, I need you to understand something. If Sarah deletes those messages with Chen, or if Chen finds out she saved them, the evidence disappears. And without evidence that she was following orders, she takes the fall for everything. Exactly. I pulled up Walsh's number on my phone. David, your sister screwed me over badly. But if she's just a pawn in a bigger game, then the people who set up that game are the ones who should pay the real price. His phone buzzed again. Another message from Sarah, this one more urgent, asterisk David, please. My career is on the line here, asterisk. What do you want me to tell her? I looked around at my destroyed restaurant one more time, then at David's terrified face. Tell her we're going to talk tomorrow morning. All 3 of us together. And then what? Then we figure out whether I'm going to help save her career or finish destroying it. The next morning came with a kind of gray, drizzling rain that made everything look as miserable as I felt. I'd spent most of the night staring at the ceiling, turning over David's revelation about Sarah's text messages and what they might mean for the bigger picture Walsh was painting. By 7 a.m., I was back at the restaurant, partly because I needed to meet some contractors for estimates and partly because the destruction helped me stay focused on exactly why I was in this mess. The smell of mold and stagnant water had a way of cutting through any sympathy I might feel for my niece's situation. Sarah's car pulled up at exactly 8 o'clock, she'd always been compulsively punctual. David arrived 2 minutes later, looking like he'd slept about as well as I had. They both approached the entrance together, Sarah walking with that stiff, careful posture of someone trying not to show how terrified they were. Uncle Tom. Sarah's voice was barely above a whisper as I let them in. She looked around at the damage with what seemed like genuine shock. I didn't realize it was this extensive. Hard to assess damage properly when your adjuster conducts exterior-only inspections but reports them as thorough on-site evaluations, I said flatly. But I'm sure you remember the details. Her face flushed. About that. Save it. I gestured toward the 3 folding chairs I'd set up in what used to be the bar area. We're not here to relitigate your professional ethics. We're here because David seems to think you're not the only problem at Coastal Insurance. We sat down in a triangle, the awkward geometry of a family that had forgotten how to trust each other. Sarah kept glancing at David like she was hoping he'd jump in and start advocating for her, but he was staring at his hands. David showed me your text conversation with Chin, I said without preamble. The timing is interesting. Sarah's head snapped up. You showed him. The betrayal in her voice was sharp enough to cut glass. Sarah, listen to what Uncle Tom is saying, David said quietly. The timing means Chin knew about the investigation before compliance contacted you. So what? He's a regional manager. Of course he has advance notice of, she stopped mid-sentence, the implications finally clicking. Oh. Oh is right. I pulled out my phone and showed her Walsh's email. They're auditing every claim you've handled for the past 18 months. But here's the kicker, they're not just looking at your work. They're looking for patterns that suggest systemic problems. Sarah's face went through several different shades of pale. Systemic problems. The kind that happen when regional managers pressure adjusters to process claims faster and deny them more frequently, without being too particular about whether the denials are actually justified. I leaned forward, watching her carefully. Tell me, Sarah, did Chin ever give you targets for claim processing? Quotas for denials versus approvals? She was quiet for so long I thought she wasn't going to answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. Informal targets. Nothing in writing. She looked up at me with those steel gray eyes, but now they were filled with a different kind of fear. He said the company was looking for adjusters who could make tough decisions quickly, especially on large claims that might be ambiguous. Ambiguous how? Claims where there might be multiple ways to interpret policy language. He said the adjusters who showed good judgment on those cases would be considered for advancement opportunities. David and I exchanged glances. Sarah was describing a textbook case of systematic claim suppression, the kind that generated massive lawsuits and criminal investigations when it came to light. Sarah, I said carefully, do you still have those text messages with Chin? She nodded. All of them. Even the ones from before my claim was filed. Another nod, but hesitant this time. I need you to forward every message, every email, every communication you've had with Chin about claim processing targets or guidelines. Everything. Why would I? Because in about 6 hours, you're supposed to give a presentation on ethical claims processing to a room full of industry professionals. And right now, the only thing standing between you and career annihilation is whether you can prove you were following orders instead of going rogue. Sarah's hands were shaking as she pulled out her phone, scrolling through months of messages with Chin. Tom, if I turn these over to you, what guarantee do I have that you won't use them to make everything worse for me? You don't, I said bluntly. But right now, I'm the only person in this room who understands how corporate investigations work. You can trust me to help you navigate this, or you can walk into that conference presentation blind and hope Walsh's investigation doesn't blow up in your face during the Q&A session. David cleared his throat. There's something else. Sarah, show him the email you got this morning. She shot him a look that could have melted steel, but pulled up her email app anyway. It's from the conference organizers. Someone submitted a question for my presentation through the anonymous portal. She turned her screen toward me, and I had to fight to keep my expression neutral as I read my own question back to myself. Asterisk, Ms. Patterson, given the increasing scrutiny on claims adjusters who allow personal relationships to influence professional decisions, what protocols does Coastal Insurance have in place to prevent conflicts of interest? Asterisk. Interesting question, I said. Very specific. Too specific. Sarah's voice was tight with suspicion. Whoever submitted this knows about my situation. They know about us being related, and they know I'm under investigation. David was watching me carefully. Any idea who might have that kind of inside information, Uncle Tom? Smart kid. Too smart for his own good sometimes. Could be anyone, I said with a shrug. Industry professionals love gossip. Word gets around fast when someone's under compliance review. Sarah wasn't buying it. The question was submitted 2 days ago. Before Walsh called you. Before any of this became common knowledge. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting someone's been planning this for a while. She leaned forward, her investigative instincts kicking in despite her panic. Someone wanted to make sure my presentation would be as humiliating as possible, right when my career is most vulnerable. I felt a flicker of respect for her deductive skills, even under these circumstances. But before I could respond, my phone rang. Jennifer Walsh again. I need to take this, I said, stepping away from the table. Mr. Patterson, we have a problem. Walsh's voice was tense. I just received a call from David Chin claiming that you've been harassing his adjuster and threatening to file false complaints unless your claim is expedited. The audacity was breathtaking. That's interesting, considering I haven't spoken to Chin at all. The only contact I've had with your company has been through you and the original denial letter. I understand that, but Chen is now claiming that Ms. Patterson informed him about your family relationship weeks ago, and that she properly recused herself from your claim. He's saying someone else processed the denial. I looked back at Sarah, who was watching me with growing alarm as she sensed the conversation wasn't going well. Ms. Walsh, are you telling me that Chen is now claiming Sarah wasn't involved in denying my claim? That's exactly what I'm telling you. And if his story holds up, it means either our internal records are wrong, or someone has been falsifying documentation to make it appear that Ms. Patterson handled claims she wasn't authorized to touch. The implications hit me like a freight train. If Chen was trying to pin everything on Sarah while claiming she properly recused herself, then someone else had been processing claims under her name and credentials. Which meant Sarah might not just be following orders, she might be the designated fall guy for systematic fraud she didn't even know about. Ms. Walsh, I think we need to have a much longer conversation. And I think my niece is going to need a lawyer. After I hung up with Walsh, I turned back to find Sarah and David staring at me with matching expressions of dread. What did she say? Sarah's voice cracked on the words. I sat back down and delivered the news like ripping off a band-aid. Chen is claiming you properly recused yourself from my claim weeks ago. He's telling Walsh that someone else processed the denial using your credentials. The silence stretched for nearly a full minute. Sarah's face cycled through confusion, realization, and then pure terror as the implications sank in. That's impossible, she whispered. I processed that claim myself. I remember every detail, the photos, the contractor estimates, the policy review. I wrote that denial letter. Then either Chen is lying to cover his own ass, or someone's been using your access to process claims without your knowledge. I pulled up Walsh's contact information. Either way, you're being set up as the fall guy for something much bigger than personal grudges. David leaned forward. Wait, if someone else was using Sarah's credentials, wouldn't there be computer logs? Digital fingerprints? There would be, I said slowly, unless someone with administrative access was covering their tracks. Someone like a regional manager who understands the company's IT systems. Sarah suddenly went very still. The override codes. What override codes? Last month, Chen gave me new system access codes. He said they were upgrading security protocols and all senior adjusters were getting enhanced permissions. Her hands were shaking as she pulled up her work email. But the new codes give me access to claims I never worked on. I can see processing notes on files from other adjusters, approval patterns, denial rationales. She scrolled through her email until she found what she was looking for. Here. Look at this. The email from Chen was dated 3 weeks before Hurricane Debbie hit, with the subject line, Updated System Credentials, Confidential. The message was brief and corporate, Sarah, attached are your new system access codes effective immediately. These enhanced permissions are part of a pilot program for senior adjusters. Do not share these codes with other staff members, Enhanced permissions, David repeated. For a pilot program. A pilot program that gave her access to manipulate claims she never worked on, I said grimly. And created a digital trail that makes it look like she processed everything herself. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it and her face went white. It's Chen. He wants to meet with me in an hour to coordinate our response to the compliance investigation. Don't go, I said immediately. If he's already throwing you under the bus to Walsh, that meeting isn't about coordination. It's about making sure your story aligns with whatever narrative he's building. But if I don't show up, it looks like I'm being uncooperative. Sarah, listen to me. I grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to meet my eyes. Chen isn't trying to protect you. He's trying to protect himself. And the best way to do that is to have a rogue adjuster who let family drama compromise her judgment take the blame for systematic fraud. David's phone started ringing. He looked at the caller ID and frowned. It's someone from Coastal Insurance. Not Chen, someone named Rodriguez. The name triggered my memory. Rodriguez. That's the adjuster who supposedly did the exterior inspection of my restaurant. David answered the call on speaker. Hello. David Patterson. The voice was heavily accented, nervous. I got your number from your sister Sarah. I need to talk to someone in your family about what's happening at the company. What about it? They're saying Sarah processed claims that I handled. Claims where I recommended approval, but the system shows denials under her access codes. Rodriguez's voice dropped to nearly a whisper. I think someone's been changing our work after we submit it. Making it look like certain adjusters are responsible for improper denials. Sarah grabbed the phone. Miguel? It's Sarah. What do you mean someone's changing our work? Sarah, don't talk over the company phones anymore. Chen called me this morning asking about your uncle's claim. But I never did an exterior inspection on October 15th. I was in Miami that whole weekend for my daughter's wedding. The bottom fell out of my stomach. Rodriguez, if you didn't do the inspection, who submitted the report? That's what I'm trying to tell you. Someone with administrative access has been filing reports under our names, processing claims we never touched, creating documentation for work that never happened. Sarah and I looked at each other with dawning horror. This wasn't just about systematic claim suppression or even insurance fraud. This was about a coordinated effort to manufacture evidence that would destroy specific adjusters while protecting the people actually running the scheme. Miguel, Sarah said urgently, how many other adjusters are affected? All of us who got the enhanced access codes. Martinez, Williams, Johnson, were all showing improper denials on claims we recommended for approval. David cleared his throat. And where are all of you supposed to be in 3 hours? At the conference, Rodriguez said quietly. 5 of us are presenting on different aspects of ethical claims processing. It's supposed to be our chance to show regional management we're ready for advancement. I felt a chill run down my spine. 5 adjusters, all with enhanced access codes, all under investigation, all about to give presentations on ethics to a room full of industry professionals who would soon learn about their compliance violations. It's not a conference, I said slowly. It's an execution. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. Chen wasn't just covering his tracks, he was orchestrating the complete destruction of 5 adjusters in front of the entire southeastern insurance industry. Miguel, I said, taking the phone from Sarah, who suggested you all apply to speak at this conference. Chen did. He said it would be great visibility for our careers, show the regional team we were leadership material. Rodriguez's voice got smaller. He even helped us prepare our presentations, gave us talking points about best practices and ethical standards. Sarah was staring at me with growing horror. He wanted us there. He wanted us all in that room when the investigation went public. I was already pulling up the conference website, scrolling through the speaker schedule with new eyes. Sarah's presentation on ethical standards was at 10 a.m. Rodriguez was speaking about thorough investigation techniques at 11 a.m. The other 3 adjusters were scattered throughout the morning sessions, all covering topics that would sound like cruel jokes once their compliance violations became public knowledge. It gets worse, David said quietly, reading over my shoulder. Look at the afternoon keynote speaker. David Chen. 2 p.m. presentation titled, Building Trust Through Transparent Claims Processing, a Regional Manager's Perspective. Son of a bitch, I breathed. He's going to throw you all to the wolves during the morning sessions, then present himself as the ethical leader cleaning house in his department. Sarah's phone buzzed with another text from Chen, *Sarah, really need to connect before the conference. Important developments in the compliance situation. Meet me in conference room B at the hotel, 20 minutes, asterisk. He's getting desperate, I said. Probably wants to make sure you don't figure out what's happening before you get up on that stage. What if I don't show up to the conference at all? Sarah asked. What if I just disappear for a few days until this blows over? Then you look guilty, and Chin gets to present you as an adjuster who fled rather than face accountability. I was thinking fast, pieces of a plan starting to form. Plus, you'd be abandoning the other 4 adjusters who don't even know they're walking into a trap. David leaned forward. So what do we do? I looked at my watch. The conference started in 2 hours. Sarah's presentation was in 3 hours. In that time, I needed to figure out how to turn Chen's trap against him without destroying 5 innocent people in the process. First, Sarah sends a message to the other adjusters. Warns them what's happening without going through company channels. I pulled up the conference attendee list. Miguel, are you still there? Still here. Can you reach Martinez, Williams, and Johnson without Chen knowing? Yeah, we're all staying at the same hotel. But what do I tell them? Tell them to document everything on their personal phones before the conference starts. Every access code, every claim they remember actually working on, every conversation with Chen about targets or quotas. I paused, the full scope of what we needed to accomplish hitting me. And tell them that when they give their presentations, they need to be ready to go off script. Sarah grabbed my arm. Tom, what are you planning? I'm planning to make sure David Chen's afternoon keynote becomes the most memorable presentation of his career. I smiled grimly. But first, you're going to that meeting with him. Are you insane? You just said. You're going to that meeting, and you're going to record every word. I held up my phone. Because if Chen is really orchestrating this whole thing, he's going to want to make sure you stick to his version of events. And arrogant people always reveal more than they should when they think they're in control. David shook his head. This is too dangerous. If Chen realizes what she's doing, then we'll have confirmation that he's running a criminal enterprise, not just cutting corners on claims processing. I looked at Sarah seriously. But it has to be your choice. I won't force you to take this risk. Sarah was quiet for a long moment, staring at her phone with Chen's increasingly urgent messages. When she looked up, there was something new in her expression, not the desperate panic from earlier, but a cold anger that reminded me of our mother when someone tried to take advantage of her family. He destroyed my reputation to save his own career, she said quietly. He was going to let me stand up there and humiliate myself while he played the hero. That's the plan, I confirmed. She stood up, checking that her phone was fully charged. Then let's ruin his day. The conference room at the Marriott was buzzing with nervous energy when I arrived, 30 minutes before Sarah's presentation was scheduled to begin. I'd positioned myself in the back corner with a clear view of the stage and the exit, my phone recording everything as insurance adjusters from across the southeast settled into their seats, completely unaware they were about to witness the implosion of a criminal conspiracy. Sarah had come through beautifully. Her meeting with Chen had been recorded in crystal clear detail, 43 minutes of him coaching her on how to deflect blame, how to present herself as an overwhelmed adjuster who'd made honest mistakes under pressure, and most damning of all, how to avoid mentioning the enhanced access protocols that had given her visibility into the systematic fraud he'd been orchestrating. But the real smoking gun had come when Chen assured her that the other adjusters would be handling their situations similarly, confirming that all 5 were being set up to take the fall for his scheme. Sarah had played her part perfectly, agreeing to everything while secretly documenting his confession. Now, as she stepped up to the podium to begin her presentation on maintaining ethical standards in claims processing, I felt a surge of pride mixed with anticipation. My niece had found her spine just when it mattered most. Good morning, everyone, Sarah began, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was about to do. I'd like to start today by addressing the elephant in the room. My name is Sarah Patterson, and I'm currently under investigation by my company's compliance department for potential ethics violations in my claims processing. The room went dead silent. This wasn't how conference presentations typically began. I'm here today not to defend my actions, but to expose a systematic fraud scheme that's been operating at Coastal Insurance Solutions under the direction of Regional Manager David Chen. She clicked to her first slide, which displayed screenshots of Chen's text messages instructing her to process denials quickly without thorough investigation. I could see Chen in the front row, his face cycling through confusion, rage, and panic as he realized his carefully orchestrated plan was crumbling in real time. He started to stand, probably to object or leave, but Sarah's next words froze him in place. For those of you wondering about the legality of what I'm sharing, please note that this presentation is being live-streamed to the Florida Department of Financial Services, the FBI's Insurance Fraud Task Force, and the legal departments of 7 major news outlets. That part was true, thanks to some quick work by my lawyer Marcus, who'd spent the morning setting up the connections once we'd explained what Sarah had discovered. The beauty of conducting the revelation at an industry conference was that everything was automatically documented and witnessed by hundreds of professionals. Rodriguez stepped up to join Sarah at the podium, followed by Martinez, Williams, and Johnson. All 5 adjusters who'd been targeted for destruction were now standing together, presenting a united front as they systematically dismantled Chen's operation with documented evidence, recorded conversations, and digital forensics that proved claims had been altered after initial processing. The room erupted as industry professionals realized they were witnessing the exposure of one of the largest insurance fraud schemes in state history. Chen made a desperate attempt to leave, but found his path blocked by 2 men in dark suits who materialized near the exit, FBI agents who'd been monitoring the live stream and had arrived with remarkable speed. 6 months later, I was putting the finishing touches on Patterson's Bistro's grand reopening menu when Sarah called with the final update. Chen had pleaded guilty to 15 felony counts of insurance fraud and systematic claim manipulation. The other executives involved in the scheme had received similar sentences. Coastal Insurance had paid out over $50 million in restitution to affected policyholders and faced federal oversight for the next 5 years. Sarah had been cleared of all charges, received a commendation from the state insurance board for her role in exposing the fraud, and accepted a position as senior ethics compliance officer at a competing firm, with a salary that finally allowed her and Mike to start the family they'd been planning. The insurance claim for my restaurant had been paid in full within a week of the conference, along with additional compensation for business interruption and punitive damages. But more importantly, my relationship with my niece had been rebuilt on a foundation of mutual respect rather than family obligation. As I hung up the phone and looked around at my fully restored dining room, I couldn't help but smile. Sometimes the best revenge really is living well, and ensuring that justice gets served along the way.